How significant is this deal?
Kieran, this is a big deal, not only because it's the first time the US has shared nuclear technology with another country in 70 years, but because this would have been unthinkable even 5 years ago. We know that senior Australian military officers are meant to have sounded out the US on this question before of whether they would share nuclear propulsion technology. But the idea that we're announcing this today in such a significant fashion is down to one factor, and that is increasing concern about China. I think what this shows, first and foremost, is that there is a lot more concern about what China is doing in London, Canberra and Washington than we know about. And that's driven by things like the fact that China has built 3 new fields in the northwest of its country full of nuclear missile silos. It's modernising its nuclear force. So this is about presenting a united front, a deterrence to any adventurism that China might be thinking about. It's about positioning these 3 democracies to be at the forefront of development of strategic and critical technologies in AI, in cyber, in quantum. Some of the potential developments that will come out of that side of this announcement could be much more significant than these submarines, but there's no doubt that we will see a greater US and UK naval presence, particularly in Western Australia, and that this transition is a significant one for the Australian Navy, who have wanted it for some time.
So just picking up on one thing you said there in terms of those other technologies, Greg Moriarty, the Defence Secretary, said it publicly. Privately, I've heard it from other senior figures within government that watch for the other areas of cooperation emerging. Keep an eye on that, because that will be as significant as the subs. Much more to come on that front. Can you give our viewers a sense of what exactly they're talking about, and can that be realised much sooner than this sort of hardware we're talking about, where it won't be in the water for at least a decade?
Yeah, and look, if you think about where we'll see that, so we will see a much greater investment, I think, from the Australian government in the next Defence White Paper in autonomous and semi-autonomous systems designed to operate in the sea around Australia. So whether that's swarms of underwater drones, whether that's sensors designed to pick up activity, we're seeing a lot of development in those areas. The kind of development we've seen in the Air Force around something like Loyal Wingman, a plane that can fly alongside the Joint Strike Fighter without piloting it to enhance human forces with teaming of humans and machines together. We're going to see all of that develop, I think, in the underwater realm, particularly in the Eastern Indian Ocean. And that will be driven in time by developments in quantum technology, which make much more impressive and accurate sonar, for example. So Australia in recent years has struggled to get access to the most sensitive of US technology. For example, on some of the missiles that we've been able to get access to, we don't get access to the source code, so we don't truly know how they work. This agreement will presumably change all of that. It will put us in a position to be able to access that technology, to be able to manufacture it here in time as well, to be able to build up our own stocks in case we need them for the worst possible risk.
And in that period of the Collins-class sub, the obsolescence in the 2030s, if there is a period, maybe some overlap, but how would you see the British and US submarine capacity being used, or, you know, visiting our facilities around the nation if there were to be a gap in capacity? How would that work?
Well, it's been suggested before that the US might home port a nuclear submarine in Western Australia. I'm sure that's on the agenda. The UK is taking a more active naval presence in the Indo-Pacific, and so, of course, they'll want a safe place to refuel and rearm and to do maintenance as well. So I think there'll be examinations of options around that. The problem, of course, is that the US doesn't have spare Virginia-class submarines lying around. It's trying to build as many as it can for its own Navy, for its own needs. And the UK, of course, has similar restraints. The biggest limitation on all of this won't be the hardware, it'll be the people. To train an Australian nuclear submarine boat, a captain, a commander, will take a long time, because they need to not only be experts in submarine operations, they need to be experts in nuclear engineering as well. And I understand that we may have put a few naval personnel into some of those courses in the US in recent years. So that will be the limitation on how fast we can move on all this workforce and personnel.
And with the nuclear capacity, the benefit is, I guess, there are many benefits, but one of them is that the submarine doesn't have to come to the surface, that essentially it's only restricted, its capacity is only restricted by the capacity of the crew to stay underwater.
Yeah, you're literally limited by the amount of fresh fruit you can pack on board. I mean, it gives you range, it gives you size, because of course you've got more power to power activities on the boat and to power autonomous underwater vessels that might dock with the boat. I mean, the most important thing this will give Australia's Navy is the ability to remain on station far from home for longer without having to come back to port so frequently. Of course, there are disadvantages to nuclear submarines as well. You can't ever switch the reactor off like you can with a conventional submarine. You can switch the engines off and you can sit very quietly off a shipping channel or a harbour and listen in. But Australia's problem is range, and we have a lot of ocean to cover. So we'll need to have, I think we'll still be looking at 12 submarines, but they'll be able to do a lot more once we have them built.
James Brown, great to get your analysis. Thanks.
Thanks, Kieran.